In this presentation, I'll share some of what I have learned exploring hiring tools. We are particularly interested in how their filters work, and also the question of artificial intelligence and how this technology is utilized. We're also interested in the question of accessibility and diversity. We'll look briefly at ZipRecruiter, Indeed, Workopolis, nexxt, Jobcase, Monster, Jazz HR, JOBVITE, Workable, Lever, HireVue, and LinkedIn. On ZipRecruiter, applicants upload their resumes and create a fantastic ZipRecruiter profile. ZipRecruiter has used AI technology to create a personal recruiter called Phil. And so Phil is what optimizes the job search or the candidate search. Since Phil is not a real person, we understand that it uses algorithm to make as close a match as possible to the job. And this is based on criteria such as experience, education, career goals, and so on. When a job is posted, ZipRecruiter's matching technology not only scans their proprietary database, but it also extends the search to their many different job boards that are networked with ZipRecruiter. And not only that, but it also solicits applications from qualified candidates. The system then showcases the best candidates by prioritizing them at the top of the search. Once the recruiter reviews and flags those top candidates as ideal, the system then uses that feedback to find similar candidates. This is the point in the process where I suspect the potential for bias can be introduced. Since it is the recruiter that the technology relies on for feedback, it models the biases of the recruiter and reinforces and reproduces them in the search. ZipRecruiter also claims you can search their database for free. But in reality, when you attempt to initiate a search, it routes you to another page to create an account, as shown in this screen grab. So in essence, you have to subscribe to their service in order to gain access to their database. So we'll now turn our attention to the next system, which is Indeed. Indeed is a popular job board that attracts hundreds of millions of visitors. And similar to other job boards, Indeed is also equipped with skills assessments. Now, these assessments can be taken at candidates' own volition or at the request of the employer. So the employer may choose to include one or two assessments with their job postings. They can choose up to 2 assessments, from skills assessments, aptitude test, or a personality test. The assessments are located at the bottom of the page where the applicants upload their resume. Assessments take less than 10 minutes to complete, but candidates are advised to set aside a half hour for each one. At this time, only U.S. candidates can see their test scores. Scores can only be seen by the employer that requested the assessment, but it cannot be shared among employers. If other employers have requested the same assessments, the system will prompt the applicant to make them available to those other employers. The scores are stored for 6 months after their completion, and applicants have the option to make them visible on their profile if they choose. However, the scores cannot be removed. In terms of accessibility statement, there is none, and neither is there any mention of special accommodation for candidates who might need it. Jobs can be posted for free on Indeed, but free jobs only appear in the general search results and often get lost in the mix. So to drive more applicants, Indeed recommends that employers, quote, sponsor their job ads. In other words, use their premium service to promote the ad for a minimum of $5 per day. Indeed also claims that you can search their database for free. But the moment you attempt to engage a search, the system loops you to their subscription page that is shown on your screen. So in order to search their database, one has to purchase one of their subscription services. Workopolis is now a subsidiary of Indeed, and from its flagship days as one of Canada's main job boards, Workopolis has been relegated to being a mere portal of Indeed. When one visits Workopolis, there is a message that directs them to free postings on Indeed. But as I have previously mentioned, Indeed's free postings are practically worthless. We'll look next at nexxt. Formerly known as Brand, nexxt serves the purpose of connecting people looking for employment with companies looking for workers. And here, like other places, job seekers have access to hundreds of different industries. nexxt uses sophisticated advertising software to ensure the most qualified candidates see the job ads. They also make use of job matching technology, which leverages the use of behavioral data. nexxt also offers employers their candidate search solutions, which help to ensure that the best candidates are discovered. Since you have to pay for their services, I was not able to explore how their search filters work. But depending on your recruitment needs, you would have to purchase one of their subscription plans as shown here for 1, 5, 10, or an unlimited number of job postings. Without first-hand experience of how their filters work or how they can be manipulated, I can only rely on my educated guess, because the categories do represent areas that algorithms are susceptible to filtering out. Nevertheless, diversity is a focus that caught my attention. And while this particular focus is helpful, it suggests or can be read that diversity is not integrated into their mainstream recruiting and might be more of a footnote in the hiring process. And so to me, the sources that are highlighted are only tapped to meet the specific hiring quota. Companies engaging this kind of diversity represents more of a kind of tokenism and not a real commitment to changing the structure of the organization. So we look next at Jobcase. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the talent management space. And as a result, Jobcase is now a subsidiary of a company called Upward. And like others, Jobcase does not allow you to post jobs for free without first subscribing to their service. And here's how their subscription works. You set a price, you check the estimate, and you determine whether you want to make it recurring. And so I was unable to evaluate how recruiters might use or manipulate their search filters. While there wasn't much luck, there was something that I found interesting while reviewing their website. So from their discussion board, as seen here in the screenshot, there is a candidate, Jeffrey Jolly, with a disability, who shares his challenges with the inaccessibility of their website. So even though this particular issue does not implicate AI, it does, however, implicate Jobcase in the area of accessibility. We'll look next at Monster. We're now exploring Monster, which boasts a precision filtering system, but disallows a search without subscribing to one of their plans. They do, however, offer a 4-day trial, which also ends in a subscription if it is not canceled. Let's look next at how they hire for fit. In order to attract the right candidate, Monster provides guidance on how to hire for fit, as in culture-based recruiting. But here it gets into nuances beyond the competency of the candidate. And it does so by wading into subjectivities based on the recruiter's assessment of the candidate's personality and then matching or often mismatching it with the personality of the company. Company personality can be conceptualized as a question of whether the organization is more of a high pressure or high stressed environment or formal versus laid back or informal environment. It is a question as to whether decision making is more centralized or bureaucratic, or is it more of a decentralized or unstructured ecosystem. I see culture as more in terms of the norms of the organization that creates its own unique rhythm and ecosystem. We're talking about variables like the candidate's A, preferred style of work, that is whether they like working individually or collaboratively, like we do on the Odd Project. B, desire for recognition, that is the incentives the companies offer to motivate employees. And C, ideal type of workplace. That is it friendly versus reserved? Is it forgiving or is it merciless? And so on. So information gathered from these are used to create a match with the company's personality or culture. But if candidates gather intelligence on the culture of the company, they will usually frame their answers to match the culture. So there's always a possibility for mismatch in hiring. The use of a personality test can potentially circumvent this situation, but they too can be outwitted by the more sophisticated applicants. Moreover, those tests can be problematic since the results often require professional interpretation. Alternatively, companies often turn to reference checking to shed more light on the candidate. But even so, the previous boss may speak highly of the candidate, but not necessarily accurately. By Monster's own acknowledgement, it cautions that, quote, it's easy to confuse hiring for chemistry with hiring for fit, unquote. Many qualified candidates are rejected at this stage due to the recruiter's misjudgment, which is resulting from the mismatch of the candidate's personality with that of the company, or because of what is called affinity bias. We should also note that Monster also gives recruiters access to candidates' social profile. Monster's social media presence includes Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So it would not be difficult to do a quick search of candidates' social media profiles to help inform the hiring decision. On the question of accessibility, Monster has an entire page that is devoted to accessibility, and the screen grab shares their commitment to making their website accessible to every user. This is another screen grab, and here it's talking about using Monster with a screen reader. Now that's it for Monster. We'll now look briefly at Jazz HR.
Like most other sites, there is no access to Jazz HR without subscribing to their service. I was therefore unable to evaluate how their search filters work. Neither is there any statements about accessibility or diversity. So let's explore JOBVITE's hiring system next.
JobVite has a web page dedicated to diversity and inclusion that helps organizations meet their target for a diverse talent. JobVite also claims to have a bias blocker, which purportedly helps reduce unconscious bias in the hiring process. And it does so by allowing the recruiter to what it calls de-identify the applicant before sharing their resume with the hiring manager. The process of de-identification involves the removal of all references to the applicant's social identities, such as race, gender, education, nationality, religion, and so on. So all of that information is redacted from the resume before it's sent to the hiring manager.
But I find JobVite's mechanism to eliminate bias to be rather counterintuitive and problematic on several levels. The first question it raises is, how does the recruiter access resumes? The procedure assumes that there is no discrimination involved in the filtering process, which is highly unlikely because filtering is inherently discriminatory. The process further assumes that the recruiter is free from bias, but it is between the recruiter and the mechanism of filtering that bias is known to be introduced into the process. So to me, this is highly problematic. We'll explore workable next. With Workable, there is a 15-day, no credit card free trial offer where job postings get shared to over 200 job boards. And the screen grab shown here is their accessibility statement. So let's look next at Lever. We're now looking at Lever, and Lever claims a commitment to addressing discrimination by helping hiring managers identify unconscious bias throughout the recruitment process. They boast a built-in diversity and equal employment opportunity surveys that assess candidates at various stages of the hiring process. They also have the capability to determine whether a racialized group is over or underrepresented. And Lever also assesses interview outcomes to see whether racialized candidates are trending higher or lower. The screen grab you're looking at reflects this. They also evaluate compensation among ethnic groups in their efforts to root out inequity. However, their conceptualization of diversity is exclusionary as there is no mention of or commitment to candidates with disability, nor is there any accessibility statements on their website.
We're now looking at HireVue, and HireVue offers an automated, AI-driven enterprise video interview software that is marketed as the preferred cutting-edge technology to conduct structured interviews. After the video interviews, the speech is transcribed to text and then evaluated and ranked. This digital hiring system is assessed to be more consistent than the traditional interview and fairer or less biased in evaluating candidates. HireVue comes with its own proprietary collection of interview questions that have been vetted by psychologists. Alternatively, companies have the option of using their own set of interview questions if they prefer. This system, HireVue claims, is independently audited. HireVue also offers game-based assessments as part of its hiring solutions, and these tests are aimed at assessing both cognitive and non-cognitive skills, which are followed up by a post-evaluation report. Coding assessments form part of the technical hiring solution for technical candidates and developers to evaluate their competencies. These assessments are deployed to reassure recruiters that they are moving the best candidates ahead. Assessments are available to test programming languages such as C#, Java, JavaScript, Haskell, Ruby, and so on, all of which are auto-scored. HireVue also has the capability of facilitating video-enabled live coding sessions for more technical interviews designed for more advanced stages of the selection process. With the use of artificial intelligence, HireVue claims to adhere to the highest ethical standards. Their artificial intelligence technology is verified before deployment and monitored on an ongoing basis to ensure the performance is consistent with expectations. HireVue actively works to block bias from entering their system and also to mitigate against its replication, which they claim to accomplish with a great degree of accuracy. Part of their talent management objective is not just to enhance hiring efficiency, but also to foster diversity and create a more equal workforce, irrespective of candidates' social identities. HireVue's data scientists engage the services of seasoned industrial organizational psychologists who are charged with the keen oversight of their AI-influenced selection process to ensure that protected groups are not disproportionately impacted. And their methods are triangulated to ensure that hiring decisions are sound. They argue, quote, our data scientists and IO psychologists build HireVue assessment algorithms in a way that removes data from consideration by the algorithm that contributes to adverse impact without significantly impacting the assessment's predictive accuracy. The result is a highly valid, bias-mitigated assessment that helps to ensure human decision making while promoting diversity and equal opportunity regardless of gender, ethnicity, age, disability status. In terms of the development of HireVue's assessment models, the algorithms that are created and utilized are not universal, but are trained for individualized job duties based on a number of factors. Whenever HireVue develops new algorithms or models, part of the process is to ensure that all biases against protected groups are identified and mitigated. Data points that may result in a disproportionate impact on protected groups are minimized. Once the problem has been detected, the algorithm is changed in order to rectify the situation. Besides, there is ongoing scrutiny of the technology to ensure that biases are completely eliminated. Heavily immersed in the utilization of artificial intelligence, HireVue leads the HR space with the publication of the industry's seminal AI explainability statement as part of its suite of best practices. The 29-page document is crafted in accessible language to shed light on the fundamentals of the technology and how it processes personal data to enhance the hiring process. Also embedded within the text is also its accessibility statement. In the screenshot, HireVue demonstrates how its technology ranks candidates for employers. As such, HireVue has positioned itself as a processor of data while mapping the employer as the controller of the data since they are the final deciding authority. In doing so, HireVue absolves itself from any adverse recruitment decision, directing rejected candidates to take up any concerns they may have with the hiring company to whom the software is contracted. Every processed job candidate gets sent a customized report that details their scores.
HireVue has qualified raters that manually evaluated the data gathered from the video interviews against specific competencies. On top of that, there is another layer of evaluators who are tasked with scoring the answers of every individual applicant. Calibration sessions were regularly held to ensure consistency among the raters. In situations where there is wide variation among raters, tests are either rescored or completely rejected. Where there is a wide variation among raters, all the noise of the data is rejected, for example, inaudible words. Video interviewing undergoes rigorous testing for accuracy and reliability using a system called K-fold cross-validation. In recent times, the Electronic Privacy Information Center, otherwise called EPIC, which is a watchdog entity based in Washington, D.C., which has long advocated for transparency and ethical limitation in the utilization of algorithms and artificial intelligence, has complained to and requested that the Federal Trade Commission launch an investigation in HireView's standard operating procedures that are alleged to be in breach of Section 5 of the FTC Act. The EPIC has also found HireView to be in contravention of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development AI principles, as well as the Universal Guidelines for AI that has the backing of hundreds of experts in scores of organizations spread out among 40 countries.
The multiplicity of ways that disability can affect people have not been flagged in the training data, and there are implications for people with disabilities. In other words, the problem for candidates with disability is that they might physically demonstrate qualities that are unknown to the algorithms, and generally there is a wide scope of disability qualities. It is highly likely that the technology might not have seen a unique case of disability and therefore lacks the frame of reference. To mitigate this problem, the training data would have to include every possible disability characteristic, which is a tremendous undertaking. According to Engler, quote, since most applicants for any specific job do not get hired, applicants with no similar high-performing past employees do not stand a chance. Furthermore, people who are deaf or hard of hearing might also suffer discrimination from the technology because of the variation in the speech pattern. Over 500,000 Americans have been assessed to have some form of craniofacial condition. Besides, millions of Americans have also been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, which, similar to the craniofacial condition, can also manifest atypical speech and facial expressions. Frederick Hess, who is the Director of Education Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute, said while he is, quote, not impressed by HireView's platform, which he called dystopian, and pseudoscience, the overall trend toward assessment-based hiring may undermine the economic value of a college degree. He said if companies begin to hire based on skills tests that are, unlike HireView, non-prejudicial and legally sound, they will stop using college degrees as a proxy for knowledge and employability. What HireView does is it evaluates candidates based on feedback gathered from interview with current employees. And so candidates are matched to those who are already employed. Therefore, the algorithms are predisposed to favor a specific candidate profile. And even though HireView claims that the algorithm is bias-free, this is highly unlikely since human biases are inadvertently transferred to the algorithms they create. Annelies Gorger from the Brookings Institution adds that video interviewing could create anxiety for certain applicants in pursuit of employment in industries that have traditionally been exclusionary. And while HireView argues that its algorithms are indifferent to social identities, opponents to the use of the algorithm argue that the technology does take note of faces and gestures, which bodes unfavorably for candidates with a disability.
I've already shared my general findings about LinkedIn, but I just wanted to briefly insert an addenda that I hadn't shared during my previous research about their filters. If a company has what they consider to be a perfect candidate, they can locate their profile as shown on the screen. Then this gives them the option to clone that particular candidate by telling the system to find similar applicants. The system will then launch a search for candidates with similar skills, similar experience, and similar background. Now, clearly, if this search feature is used, then there is a huge opportunity to discriminate. This is one of the ways that I believe that bias gets introduced to their algorithms and replicated. So the question is, if the algorithms are conditioned to flag certain characteristics, then how does the unlearning take place? Before I quit LinkedIn, I also want to share a bit of information about culture add versus culture fit. Because of the challenges with affinity bias that often clouds recruiters' judgment, LinkedIn endorses a shift away from culture fit to hiring candidates that will add to the existing culture, which they map as culture add. The idea is that too many of the same type of candidates or employees create too much homogeneity, whether ideologically or otherwise. This has the potential to stifle creativity. So the goal is to seek out candidates that not only will work well with the existing team, but also bring diversity and fresh perspectives to the organization. And I'll leave you with a final note from Business Insider. According to Business Insider, the algorithms that sites like Monster, LinkedIn, and ZipRecruiter use are trained to learn from an assortment of demographic information. And so algorithms are selective and intentional about who sees which job ads and which applicants show up in the search results of recruiters. In a statement to Business Insider, LinkedIn insists that it forbids advertisers from engaging in age and gender discrimination. And it further argues that it, quote, proactively detects potentially discriminatory language and reviews and blocks these jobs from being posted. But Kathy O'Neill, who is a data scientist, argued that LinkedIn should be compelled to prove that their practices do not aggravate inequality. LinkedIn and ZipRecruiter both claim they do not tolerate bias against protected categories, but neither company provided evidence to Business Insider as to how they evaluate their algorithms to prove their claims are true. ZipRecruiter told Business Insider that its algorithms are prohibited from accounting for explicit markers like age, race, gender, or implicit markers like surnames, special markers like addresses, and so on. They also claim that their algorithms are not allowed to discern between genders. One final thought. I think it's worth emphasizing, in the words of Kathy O'Neill, that the expectation of algorithms is to discriminate. And they do so between a good job prospect and candidates who are deemed not to be good at the job. And so the haunting question is whether the discrimination is legal. And this concludes my findings on hiring systems. And here are the sites that help to inform this presentation. Thank you.